Mrs. Belford. Good evening. The special school board meeting for July 28th, 2016 is now in session. Pam, roll call, please.
Mr. Craig?
Present.
Mrs. Belford?
Present.
Mrs. Henderson?
Here.
Mrs. Nisi?
Here.
And Mr. Ziegler.
Present. Please join me in a moment of silence for a member of our BPS family who recently passed away, Harper Harris, a student who would have been going into 10th grade at Edgewood. Thank you. Her family and friends are in our thoughts during this very difficult time. Michelle Irwin, Director of Communications, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move further, I'd like to offer my fellow board members the opportunity to give any shout-outs or recognitions. Any board members have anything they'd like to mention? No? Well, I do. I would like to thank Dr. Thetty for opening up Tuesday's symposium for all of our employees with clear direction to the attendees on how to behave and what to do when the color guard is approaching, and to cover your heart while it's moving, etc. That came up after a little speech I had in the previous day at a summit, and it was great to hear that, and it was great to see all the people in the room do the appropriate thing to show proper flag etiquette. So thank you very much for doing that. Okay, anybody? No? Then that brings us to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
Mr. Ziegler and members of the board, on this evening's agenda, we have administrative staff recommendations and 6 consent items. You also have the yellow supplemental agenda, which are changes made to the agenda since being released to the public. There are revisions to item A5 on administrative staff recommendations.
Administrative staff recommendations. What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Belford, second by Mr. Craig. Any discussion? Let's please vote. Da-da-da. John again. Yes, us men, we're always holding things up. Sure. All right, well, then how about a voice vote? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, Dr. Blackburn, let's move on to, wait a minute, that looks like a redundancy there. We just did administrative staff recommendations. It's in.
Should have been adoption of the agenda.
Oh, we hadn't. You know what? You're right. There was a error in the script. error in the script. So we're going to redo that because that was not the administrative staff recommendations. So we're going to move to approve the adoption of the agenda. Let's do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Now, Dr. Blackburn, let's move on to administrative staff recommendations.
Under item A5, you have 6 administrative staff recommendations to consider.
What are the wishes of the board?
To approve.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Henderson, second by Mrs. Belford. I don't see it up on our screen, so a voice vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, there are no recognitions, no resolutions. Wow, we're just moving right along today. We are now at public comments. The maximum allowed time for each speaker is 3 minutes. Clarification of information presented and answers to questions specific to district business and educational matters we posted on the school board's website under a section called For the Record. Please be reminded that no profane, abusive, or slanderous speech will be permitted. And we have one speaker, and before the speaker comes up, yes, if you could move that podium, please. Our first speaker is Lane Keith, and you should feel very special that we're doing this special podium just for you. This will be our podium for public up here. Yes. Speakers are addressing the board, so this should make it a lot easier. Oh, do you have some, if you have something to put on an overhead, then somebody can you operate that for her, please? Yes, much better.
Hi. Excellent.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, Superintendent Blackburn. My name is Lane Keith. I'm a parent here in Brevard Public Schools, and I do have a prepared comment, but I would like to take a moment in respect and honor of a fallen teacher and educator here in Brevard County Public Schools also, Mrs. Lori Sargent. Mrs. Lori Sargent did pass away this week. She has lost her battle with cancer. So I just wanted to also take a moment to honor a former Gardendale educator and Stevenson Elementary educator too. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm addressing you this evening with solutions-based approaches, with a solutions-based approach to a current challenge, which is transportation as a barrier to enrollment in the choice programs. A letter similar in nature to what I'm about to share was communicated by this speaker in May of 2016. Ms. Henderson was responsive to this parent's request for information at that time. And as you can see on the DotCam, this references the strategic plan messaging, which I have interpreted to mean a passion related to increasing capacity and building on the strength of current academic programs and reducing barriers to options for students. Transportation is truly a barrier to families seeking choice programs. This has been the case since the elimination of district-provided corridor bus transportation, and now our newest dilemma, which is closure of the pay-to-ride service, which was parent-initiated 3 years ago. I today am requesting the following consideration. Please revisit the provision of district-provided corridor bus transportation for choice programs across Brevard County, as well as collaboration for the safest, most reliable, and cost-efficient method for transportation for the students participating in a choice program for the 2016-17 school year. It is gravely disappointing to learn transportation to choice schools is once again in turmoil. Families should be celebrating the end of summer. Instead, they are scrambling to consider safe and reliable transportation options or considering altogether different education options if transportation to a choice program is not available. I cannot emphasize enough the need for an expedient process so families may make arrangements accordingly. Parents want to help. They want to engage, they want to provide dialogue, they want to provide solutions, and work collaboratively to ensure that their children receive the best academic needs and goals for their own skills. Education is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and Brevard has truly creatively and collaboratively expressed that. Today, this simply is not the case based on transportation barriers. Our neighbors to the north in Duval County have faced similar circumstances in the 2012 and 13 budget year. We know budget will always be a factor for any decision process. Nobody can deny that. District-provided transportation in Duval County was reinstated for the magnet programs in Jacksonville, therefore providing a model for us in Brevard to seek professional and financial collaboration. At a time when safety is increasingly on the minds of families everywhere, studies indicate that students are 40 times safer when traveling to and from school on a school bus. Not to mention, safety-wise and ecology-wise, 36 cars are actually eliminated from the road with the use of one school bus. Please consider reinstating corridor bus service. The collaboration and creativity which sparks opportunity across Brevard County deserves to have equal access regardless of a student's zip code. Parent advocates will work with your team of professionals to ensure a barriers elimination approach to educational opportunities, which is the strategic plan for all students in Brevard County. The reference on here does have your strategic model, and it talks about the Choice, AB, IB, Cambridge, CTE programs that are proudly portrayed here in Brevard County. Our children can't get to those programs right now. They can only get there if their mom or their dad or their grandparent or a collaborative model can help get them there if they do not live in a walking distance to that location. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. I did give you extra time since you were so nice to bring up the fallen teacher. Sure, if the board members have any comments, since we're done with.
When are we going to have a conversation, or when is the board going to address this? Do we have a future agenda item, conversation, workshop? Because I know we've talked around this. We've had in our one-on-one discussions some ideas. When do you foresee this on the agenda?
On the agenda, I mean, we can schedule either a workshop or a briefing, but per the objective profiles in the strategic plan, we're scheduled to have some kind of solution by the end of this year for next school year. So we'll have conversation this year in anticipation of some kind of solution for the following school year.
So the end of this school year or the end of this calendar year?
The end of this school year, the end of the 16-17 school year in anticipation of 17-18.
Because the enrollment and application process comes right after Christmas. And I guess my question would be, some parents might not apply thinking that if there wasn't transportation, then they might not even go through the process. And so I was thinking if we wait that long, there'll be some people that won't even go after looking at that. I mean, we always do a big fair in the fall, usually around November, December, when everybody comes through. This building, I think, is when we had it last year. And then applications go out, and then it's usually by February they have to have their first choice. Does that sound right, Mrs. Henderson? So I'm thinking, I know it won't be me sitting here, but I'm thinking that it probably ought to be sooner than that, so that, or at least in more, it ought to be earlier than that, so that people know that it's a possible option, because if it's later than that, then little Jimmy or Janie or Johnny may think they're going to school A, and then if it falls through, then mom and dad have to tell them, sorry, we're not going to be able to get you there. I see a lot of that happening if we don't think about it sooner.
So you're looking for a timeline to be speeded up for conversation and discussion?
Well, that would be my hopes, but I'm not going to be the one sitting here, so I guess I have to look to my fellow board members.
I agree with that. If we're going to have a conversation about it, it needs to be sooner than later. Because, first of all, obviously, always, and you know this, finances is an issue. But if it's a collaborative approach and we include the parents in a discussion on this, maybe we can come up with another way to do it. So I think that it's worth talking to them sooner than later so that we can have at least something in working towards having transportation for these schools. Otherwise, I agree with Mrs. Nisi. I think that it's going to be a problem.
Mr. Craig?
All good comments. The only thing I would add is, well, obviously, we can't control the private sector, and so what we thought was going to occur obviously is not for this year. Strategy that I've seen work before when confronted with a situation that is a little bit closer to to the issue, and you thought you had a lot longer to maybe think about it, and now all of a sudden it's there, is utilizing some sort of tiger team, where we grab 2 or 3 people from the staff, give them a 3-week time period to come up with a variety of solutions, best solutions, both by looking at best practices from other districts, what is currently available in this district, and just thinking outside the box to put some ideas on paper, so at least we have maybe some quick conversation to see if there's anything that can be done either for this year or at least somewhere during this year. And it certainly then could be the basis for that longer-term strategic vision or idea. But because we've all of a sudden lost the capability, I think that we need to do something proactive to at least put some ideas on the table and see what we can come up with.
Just so the board, some board members are aware of this, and so the public's aware, we've been having some conversations, I know some board members have, and I have with staff, even as a month ago, and I had brought up a suggestion which is not going to work, but may have some merit. We're still going to explore, but unfortunately not in time, and that is it possible for us to, well, first of all, the biggest problem is buses. Buses are not sitting around just to go purchase off of a lot. And the prediction, they estimate about 40 buses needed, which would be about $4 million. So even if the money was available, getting the buses is highly, highly unlikely. So there's a big resource issue with solving this problem. Then, of course, $4 million is a problem, plus operating expenses. So I suggested, what if we spun off a leasing corporation to purchase and lease buses, and if need be, partially fund it, maybe the parents fund it, or some like Ms. Henderson said, some out-of-the-box solution to solve the problem. But the bottom line right now is the buses are not available, and then there's also some quirks in the law about charging for transportation, yet we do charge for transportation in some very interesting situations where somebody lives on the inside edge of a 2-mile boundary, and if there's availability on a bus on the outer edge of the 2-mile boundary, they could pay, I think it's $2 a day to ride that bus. So charging is not completely out of the question, but we have to thoroughly analyze what we can and cannot do. This is a conversation that staff's aware of, and I think we ought to simultaneously analyze that along with other options and the strategic plan. But I just don't see that due to resources being solved for this year. Mrs. Henderson.
Well, this would be a really great time for a legislative issue, which is actually to have the legislators in the state of Florida pay for what it costs for us to transport. Right now, we pay about $23 to $25 million a year, and we get back from the state. I mean, that's because we follow the law. They are only paying us 12 or 13 million. So if they paid us for all that we had, that we do for our students, we would have extra money. So that you and I have talked about that legislative issue before. I think that's something that we might want to bring up again. Also, what is the exact issue why this company won't do it this year? Because they wanted a 3-year contract instead of a 1-year?
I don't know. Sure, come on up.
I don't think they make enough money.
Yeah, I don't think it's profitable enough model.
What I did hear is that they did double the prices from the last company because there is no competition. So it is costing people more money, but
Shockingly, that is accurate. I have also heard as many as 5 times, so there has been a significant price gouging. So whether parents were going to be in a position to be able to even afford whatever was presented to them in the event that corridor busing from a private entity was going to become available, the communication was misconstrued in my assessment of the discussion because, yes, in fact, some schools, specifically charter schools, signed with this company. In the meantime, I have then learned that some of these companies won't even be able to provide the maintenance for the buses while they're here. So we have to also be thinking about the safety and the maintenance and all the other components because there's not the depot as School Wheels Direct, which was the prior parent pay-to-ride company, had actually provided. So it gets a little bit convoluted when it comes down to how is this all going to fare out. And when we think of student safety as the #1 priority, that is what parents want when they're getting their children safely to and from school.
And that's a real interesting point because there's a statute that requires every school bus to be thoroughly inspected every 30 days, which takes about 2.5 hours of a technician's time to do that. And if they don't have the depot to repair it, I don't see they'd have the depot to inspect it every 30 days either.
Right. And that is where, as parents, we have not been engaged in that component, and that has been at the mercy, so to speak, of a company called School Wheels Direct. They are no longer in this county and in the state of Florida, and that was the previous private company, was School Wheels Direct, and they were providing that
Right.
maintenance to our understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
the charter schools that I talked to are using the company that she was trying to use, but the prices have increased enormously. But because their charters, when written, said they would provide transportation, they're pretty well stuck and had to pay that, and there is no
Wow.
competition.
Okay, any other board members? All right, the board wishes to thank this evening's speakers for your willingness to speak to the board. That moves us into consent agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
There are 6 agenda items under this category, 4 with prior information.
Does any board member wish to pull any items? No, in that case, I'll entertain a motion for consent.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Mrs. Belford, second by Mrs. Henderson. Any discussion? Let's vote on our computers, if it'll work. Drum roll, please. Mr. Craig again? Oh, I think Mr. Craig's a little technically challenged. Either that or his computer. Get some, all right, well, in that case, we'll have a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, I don't think do we need a break? No. There are no action items. Board member reports and discussion points. Any board members have anything they'd like to report? Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Henderson.
I promise to make it quick. I have received several emails, and I don't know if you guys were receiving them as well, on the compression-only CPR. Do you know what I'm talking about? And what I was wondering, and obviously we know that this is something that cannot, sort of like the busing, cannot be instituted this year, but is there a way that we could have staff at some point look at the CPR in our schools? Our HOPE programs, there's 2 HOPE PE classes, and one of them is taught by PE teachers, and one of them is taught by health teachers or some other certification. The PE teachers are not required, that particular class is not required to have CPR. If you take the class through virtual school, you are required to have CPR. And the problem with the CPR class in general is that parents are paying for it, so that if you're taking it online and you're taking it through virtual, you need to pay to have that CPR class. So that's why our PE teachers teach the class, so that we don't have to have our students pay for that class. I was just wondering if there's a way that we could look to either work with the health department or somebody else to at least see what the costs were. There's some other districts in the state of Florida that are doing this, and just seeing how they're doing it and how they're paying for it and what, you know, how they might be able to do that. It's about $70 per, yeah. I mean, because I paid to have somebody come into the house, and they did it for all the kids, but everybody had to pay that because all the kids were taking it online. But there's the new one out there, which is the compression only, so that they don't have to do the mouth-to-mouth. That's kind of a nice thing, too. I don't know if that can be wrapped into anything that we're doing, but parents are asking about it, and I'd just like to, and obviously it doesn't need to be done today, but something that we could maybe make a plan for, if you guys think it's worth looking into.
Doesn't hurt to look at it. Mrs. Belford.
Just quick comment on the compression only. The, you know, the standards have changed somewhat depending on through whom you certify. Because there are organizations, yes, and when you took it, and I have to recertify every single year for the drowning prevention stuff. And so depending on who you go through, the length of time that certification is good varies, as does the cost. So when we look into that, we need to look into different organizations through which we can certify. And the compression only is situational. There are, even if you certify under an organization teaching compression only, they will still teach you that is only situational. The rescue breathing is still a necessity, but certainly potentially an option. And I think, you know, we recently had pretty impressive, Titusville City Council recognized 19-year-old young lady that pulled a child from a community pool in Titusville a month or so ago. And 19 years old, and she is the one that really made the difference in the child surviving, because she literally just jumped into action and did the CPR. There were no adults around. I think she was 18 at the time, close to, you know, but still very, very young. So I think it's a wonderful gift to give not only our students to have that opportunity, but our community to know that we have so many people that are trained in responding.
Ms. Henderson, are you done? You want to speak on that? Okay, go ahead.
You know, this may be one of those, you know, you just got through talking to Shannon with the District Boy Scouts. You talked about they came into all of our schools and did several things. They may have someone, because I know that's part of the badges. Girl Scouts, same things. I know they work with with several of our schools. They did it over the summer on different things. So that may be something they could help us out with, Dr. Blackburn.
We all received the email today that next week is back to regular business hours. And and it was said in the email that schools can still request air conditioning for after-school events. And I went to many functions at the end of the school year that apparently they said that they had requested air conditioning, but for some reason it didn't get on. And so I guess what I'm wondering, is there any chance that we're going to be able to give our principals either the authority to put the power on, or put the AC on for these special events, or because if we put it on a schedule and it doesn't get done, it's like not even asking, and you have hundreds of parents and performers sitting in there with no air conditioning. Or can we have an improved process that guarantees that if they ask, that it gets done? So I just kind of want to look at that for our schools. You know, we kind of wanted to empower our principals, so it might be a good thing to allow them to do that. I don't know what the details are of that, but it is certainly something I think that we should look into.
That I've experienced that also, and just so that everybody knows, is a principal can't just turn on the air conditioner. What the process, which that's the solution, the process I think that would improve this is, number one, is that first of all, principals should know the number to call to central HCVAC, whatever, HVAC control, okay, because there is always somebody that they can call that has even remote access to the control system to turn it on. Those that have a facility use agreement, I think it should be in the facility use agreement, the contact number, so that if it's not on, the person that has that contract can look at their contract, and they could call that number and say, I've got contract such and such, which includes, and then they know who to contact to do that. Often there are events that staff may not be at or principals may not be at, so it's a matter of making that communication and that process smoother to solve that problem, because that does happen from time to time. Yeah, so it's a good point that you brought that up, and I think there's probably a simple process facilities could put in place to solve that. Any other board member have a report? No? Okay, we were right on time. Dr. Blackburn, do you have a report? Okay, being no further business, this meeting is now adjourned. We'll start our next one shortly. Very shortly. We are ready. How's that for short?
Okay. Good evening. This is the first public hearing for the 2016-17 proposed millage rates and tentative budget. The meeting of July 28, 2016 is now in session. And that moves
Moves us into presentation for 2016-17 budget.
Oops. Sorry.
Goodbye.
Help.
It works for me. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, whatever bright light's on. Bright light's on now.
Oh, the projector, yeah. Technology is a wonderful thing. Should have brought my sunglasses.
Oh, you want to turn that one off?
There we go.
I didn't
Thank
realize
you,
that one was
Louis.
on.
Okay. Dr. Blackburn.
I'll read slowly. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, Penny Zucker, Chief Financial Officer for Financial Services, will make a presentation on the proposed millage levy tentative budget for 2016-2017.
Good evening. Tonight, we're here to conduct the first public hearing as required by Truth and Millage. Following this presentation regarding the 2016-17 proposed millage and tentative budget, we will allow for public comments on both proposed millage levy and the tentative budget. The board will then consider 3 recommendations by Dr. Blackburn. 1, adoption of the proposed 2016-17 millage rate. 2, adoption of the 2016-17 tentative budget. And 3, authorizing the superintendent to notify the property appraiser and the tax collector of the proposed millage and rollback rates, the date and time for the second public hearing, as well as adjusting the revenues and expenditures if necessary prior to the final hearing. As part of the presentation, we will be reviewing the district's enrollment projections, taxable property values, and proposed millage, the proposed budget, and the timeline for completing the budget process. I think it's important as we begin our discussion that we keep in mind the purpose for our being here, our students. Here we see a historical review of the district's student membership over the last 10 years, as well as the projections for the 2016-17. Student membership represents the number of students being served for one or more period. From 2006-7 through 2012-13, we saw a decline in membership. Beginning in the 2013-14, we have seen increases in student enrollment. For 2016-17 school year, the district is projecting to serve 75,118 students, a 1.2% increase over the 2015-16 school year. Student membership is converted to full-time equivalents, or FTE, for funding purposes. An FTE represents a student's actual seat time in a class. FTE is typically lower than student membership. There are several reasons that this occurs. One example includes a homeschooled student who takes a class at one of our high schools. The homeschooled student is counted as one student for membership, but only 0.17 of an FTE. Similar to student membership, we saw a decline in FTE for the first half of the last 10 years. Unlike student membership, we did not begin to see an increase in FTE until 2014-15. Our projected FTE for 2016-17 is 72,335, an increase of 0.92 over the prior year. Now let's take a look at our taxable property values and the district's proposed millage rates. The statewide average increase in taxable property is 7.59%. Brevard County's taxable property value has increased 8.1%, or 0.51% higher than the state average. Our neighboring districts have experienced increases ranging from 6.46% to 8.53%. Statewide, the largest increase was Walton County at 11.38%. 5 districts across the state did receive decreases in taxable property values ranging from 0.33% to 2.35%. As can be seen here, Brevard experienced double-digit decreases in taxable property values in 2008-9, 10-11, and 2011-12. In 2013-14, we began to see taxable property values rise again. Since 2012-13, taxable property values have risen 31%. However, we have not yet reached the high of 2008-9. If the rate of increase in taxable property values continues at the average of the last 4 years, we anticipate we could reach the 2008-9 high in the next 3 years. The district has 3 millage rates that it levies each year: the required local effort, the local discretionary, and the local capital improvement, also known as school capital outlay. The proposed required local effort, or RLE, is 4.668 mills. It's important to note that while the board levies this tax, the state requires the tax to be levied in order to receive state funding from the Florida Education Finance Program, or FEFP. The required local effort includes 4.662 mills for the current year funding and 0.006 mills as an adjustment for the prior year. The adjustment is required because the actual levy for the prior year did not provide the total number of dollars required to receive the prior year's state funding. As a result, the state requires the board to levy an additional tax to adjust for the dollars levied in the prior year. The RLE makes up 65.7% of our total millage levy. The discretionary local effort millage is 0.748 mil. It has been at this level since 2013-14. From 2009-10 through 2012-13, the discretionary millage was 0.998. During the 2013 legislative session, the legislature reduced the discretionary millage by a quarter mil. However, they did allow for the quarter mil to be levied if approved at a voter referendum. The discretionary millage is subject to compression by the state. As a result, the state guarantees the local discretionary funding at $459.37 per FTE. The discretionary millage at the 2016-17 taxable property value provides the district $352.12 per FTE. As a result, the district will receive an additional $103.25 per FTE for a total of $7,468,590 from the state. The local capital improvement millage, or LCI, is 1.5 mils. Prior to the 2008 legislative session, the LCI was 2.0 mils. However, the millage was reduced by a quarter mil for 2008-2009 year. The quarter mil was transferred to the operating fund as an increase in the required local effort. During the 2009 legislative session, the LCI was reduced again by a quarter mil. This quarter mil was transferred to the operating fund as an increase in local discretionary millage. Although this quarter mil was removed from the local discretionary millage in 2013-14, it was not restored to the local capital improvement millage. As a result, this millage remains at 1.5 mils. A portion of the funds received from the LCI millage are used to pay the district's debt service. It is important to note that the district's certificates of participation debt was issued prior to the loss of the half mil. The district, as well as most districts in the state, have seen a decrease in the amount of LCI funding remaining after payment of debt service due to the loss of the half mil. The LCI millage will provide the district $51,658,103. Here we can see the 10-year history of millage levied by the board, as well as the current proposed levy of 6.916 mils. It is important to note that the total millage has decreased by 1.196 mils, or 14.74%, since its high point of 8.112 mils in 2011-12. The truth in millage, or trim law, requires us to compare our proposed millage to the rolled back rate. The rolled back rate is the millage required to provide the same tax dollars received in the prior year as the current year's taxable property value. The rolled back rate is calculated by taking the prior year tax levy minus new construction divided by the current year taxable property value. In 2015-16, the rolled back rate is 6.8187 mils. Trim requires that we state that the proposed millage is an increase of 0.0973 mil, or 1.43% over the rolled back rate. Let's take a moment to look at the impact of the changes in taxes on a homeowner. The block on the left, we see a home valued at 2015-16 at $100,000 with no change in value for 2016-17. However, the home does have a homestead exemption, reducing the property value by $25,000, making the taxable value of the property $75,000. As a result, the decrease in total millage, the owner would see a $26.93 decrease in taxes paid. The second block represents the same home valued at $100,000 in 2015-16, but has experienced the average increase in value of 8.1%. With a $25,000 homestead exemption, the taxable property value is $83,100, resulting in an increase in taxes paid of $29.09, despite the decrease in the millage year over year. It is important to note that the 2016 Save Our Homes cap for increase in property values is 0.7%. As a result, many homeowners will not experience the increase in taxes demonstrated in the second block.
Because if they're homesteaded,
They get the 0.7, yes.
right, because the Save Our Homes means they can't go up by that much.
Correct. I was just trying to give an example of an average. There is on occasion where we do see an increase. The point's just trying to show that if the value goes up, you do experience. Now we will take a look at the proposed tentative budget. Here we see the proposed 2016-17 budgets for all major funds. The total budget for government funds, which includes operating, special revenue, debt service, capital projects, and enterprise, which is our after-school child care program, includes revenues of $734,698,264. Expenditures prior to the allocation of categoricals, encumbrances, and carryforwards is $720,882,617. The unallocated categoricals, encumbrances, and carryforwards are included in the reserves of $172,923,202 and can be seen in a breakout at the bottom of the screen. The internal service funds includes the district's self-insurance programs, employee medical insurance, workers' compensation, and auto general liability insurances. Anticipated premiums total $72,022,916. Anticipated expenditures are $77,177,488, including approximately $3 million for construction and operation of up to 3 employee health clinics. Now let's take a closer look at the operating fund. This schedule provides a comparison of the tentative 2016-17 budget to the 2015-16 budget. State sources of revenue are up, mainly driven by FEFP and categoricals. Categoricals are mandated spending by the state. Local sources remain relatively flat, which is not unexpected considering our conversation about millages earlier. As we take a look at expenditures, I would like you to notice for this presentation, we have rolled categoricals, encumbrances, and carryforwards into the expenditures. Although this differs from the budget book, we feel it gives a more apple-to-apple presentation when you consider that these items are included in expenditures for 2015-16. Continuing this discussion, these items offset the variance for instructional support, and general support. The bottom line is total expenditures are expected to exceed 2015-16 by $11 million. This increase is mainly driven by expected costs from the McKay Scholarship. Transfers in and out are expected to remain flat. Finally, let's take a closer look at expected capital fund revenues, as these will drive the capital projects that can be completed this year. PICO funding is expected to increase by $694,000, while other state funding will remain flat. Local capital improvement dollars will increase by almost $4 million. In regards to impact fees, it's first important to point out that the 2015-16 estimated amount includes $4.7 million in revenue that was earned in 2014-15 but recorded in 2015-16. Because the district had elected not to collect those funds from the county, the revenue was not recorded in 2014-15. However, generally accepted accounting principles dictate that we should record revenue as earned even though we have not received it. As a result of this accounting correction, it appears as if we have expected to earn as much as it appears as if we are not expected to earn as much as we did in the previous year. In actuality, revenues for impact fees are expected to remain flat year over year at approximately $7.5 million. Food service transfers in will be dependent on projects that come up during the year. At this time, they're expected to be around $500,000 for 2016-17. Following the completion of tonight's hearing, the next steps include the tax collector will mail proposed tax notices approximately the third week of August, and that will include advertisement for our second public hearing. The second public hearing to adopt the final budget and millage will be held on Thursday, September 8th at 5:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. Following the approval of the final budget and millage, notification will be made to the Florida Department of Education, Florida Department of Revenue, and the Brevard County Tax Collector. If anyone needs additional information, it can be obtained by contacting my office at the following information. At this time, I'd like to thank the financial services staff, led by Karen Strickland and Joanne Clark, for all the hard work and hours they have put into preparing the tentative budget. I greatly appreciate them and am thrilled to be a part of their team.
Thank you. Any board members have any questions? No. Mr. Craig?
First of all, thank you very much for your brief, and thank you to the whole team for putting everything together. I just have a couple quick questions, and I know we've talked in individual stuff and some concerns, and I know you're still getting involved in everything. One thing that we continue to discuss or continue to incorporate in these briefs is the discussion of the 1.5 mil and this reduction from 2 to 1.5. Well, I understand that it is relevant in some ways. Sooner or later, it's going to not be relevant. It is what it is, and unless there is a specific reason that we're including it, and the only thing I can see is that it's because of the debt that was incurred before that, then I think we need to have a much better picture of, instead of using a 10-year, go back 20 years to look at what led up to the incursion of debt or accrual of debt, and be able, because otherwise we're just looking, we're taking a snapshot and we're cutting it off at 06 and going, well, everything before that really doesn't matter. Well, it does matter because that's where the debt was incurred. So we need to understand and have that full picture. So if we're going to continue to dwell on this 1.5 mil and the reduction and what it meant and everything, then we need to have the broader picture. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'll take that into consideration at the final presentation to
I
provide
appreciate
you additional information.
Yeah, thank you. And then the other thing is, and I know we've talked about this, but as we go forward, and I know you're working through it, when do you think you will have line item visibility in each cost center? Do you have that now?
Yes, we can provide it. Depending on the detail you want to go, we have provided a cost center budget book that does go fairly deep. If you're wanting to go deeper than that, we can certainly get you that information.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The public hearing is now declared open. We will, in accordance with Florida law, accept the speakers in the following order. First speaker is on the 2016-2017 proposed millage levy, and then the 2016-17 tentative budget. At this time, are there any individuals that would like to address the board on the 2016-17 proposed millage levy? And I'm required to ask again, at this time, are there any individuals that would like to address the board on the 2016-17 proposed millage levy? Okay. That brings us to the next item. Are there any individuals that would like to address the board on the 2016-2017 tentative budget? Please step up, state your name.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Gammon, and my son goes to the Edgewood Choice School, and I live in Vieira. And we just received notification that there will be no bus for hundreds of families in Vieira, Titusville, Merritt Island. It's not in the budget. So that's why I'm here tonight, because I just don't think that it's fair that because these kids go to a choice school, and it takes a lot to get into these schools, you have to have a B average, you have to have certain grade point average. So just because they're good students and they went through the whole lottery process, paid a fee to be a part of this school, get accepted to the school, and they get to go to this school, there's a lot of parents that are going to be really scrambling now, because we just got this email yesterday that there will be no bus. Last year we paid for a bus. We paid $135 a month for one child, $235 for two children per month, while everybody else is getting free buses. In Brevard County, we were paying for buses. The choice school students were paying for buses. Now we don't even have that option to pay for a bus. So we're not getting a free bus, we're not getting a paid-for bus, and these parents are scrambling. So somebody like me who has to drive their children to and from Merritt Island every day, I probably can do it, but what about the people in Titusville that have kids that got accepted there? Maybe they can't afford to drive their kids to and from school, so is it really fair when it's a public school to not have a bus to Edgewood or West Shore? Is that really fair to the community? I mean, I pay taxes in this community. This budget includes me, includes my family. Why can't my kids have a bus? So I would like that addressed by the board. You took away the bus 2 years ago. There was a bus. Now, at Edgewood, they said that there's no buses available. But there was 2 years ago. So where did those buses go? Because I'm looking at the enrollment, the student enrollment, and it's actually down. So where did the buses go? Where did all those kids go? I don't think it's fair. If I live in this community, and I'm not the only one, and I'm sure there's going to be hundreds more parents that are going to contact the superintendent, because they're scrambling now. People have to work full-time, and they have no way to get their kids to school now. We were willing to pay. We did pay last year. Now it's not available to us. So now what are we supposed to do? It's just not right. It's not fair, and it's not right, and I'm not going to be the only one that's going to stand here and say this to you. You're going to be hearing from a lot more parents, because this email just went out and school starts on the 10th, so it's really not fair, 10 days before school, to tell people, sorry, we don't know what to tell you. If you don't want to go to that school anymore, then go back to your local school and you can get on the free bus after they've made friends. This is a wonderful school that has the best ratings in the state, so we're just going to say, oh, well, I know it's a great school. It's not even fair to Edgewood, if you think about it like that. It's not fair to West Shore. They may lose students.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay.
And also to let you know, we did have extensive conversation on this earlier
Oh,
in
you
the
did?
meeting. Yes,
Oh, good.
yes. And then she could update you on the challenges. Thank you for
All right.
speaking.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other individuals that would like to address the board on the 2016-2017 tentative budget? Okay, then that now concludes the public hearing. That will bring us to the recommendations for the adoption of the proposed millage rates and tentative budget. Dr. Blackburn.
There are a total of 3 separate motions for the board to consider. I will read each of these recommendations into the record and request board action. A, adopt proposed 2016-2017 millage rates of operating fund required local effort 4.668, local discretionary 0.748, capital outlay 1.500, total 6.916.
At this point, we are required by law to vote to approve the proposed millage, even though we do not set it. The proposed millage is set by the state. What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Henderson, seconded by Mrs. Nisi. Let's do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn. Turn the mic on. Is your finger getting sore, Dr. Blackburn?
Just a little bit, sir. Adopt the 2016-2017 tentative budget of operating $594,185,433, special revenue $93,597,056, debt service $41,229,897, capital outlay $214,561,630, enterprise $7,557,795, subtotal $951,131,811, less transfers $45,845,165, total $905,286,646, internal service $90,250,040.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Nisi, second by Mrs. Henderson. Voice vote, please. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Authorize the superintendent to take the following actions. Notify both the property appraiser and the tax collector of the proposed 2016-2017 millage and the following rolled back rates. Operating fund rollback rates, required local effort 4.7117, local discretionary 0.7011, capital outlay rollback rate 1.4059, total rollback rate 6.8187. Notify both the property appraiser and the tax collector of the final public hearing on September 8, 2016 at 5:30 p.m. at the Educational Services Facility, Viera. Adjust the revenues and expenditures if necessary prior to the final public hearing.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Nisi, second by Mrs. Henderson. Voice vote. Now, is it working now? Let's try that. Oh, and it passes 5-0 electronically. Miracle in the ninth hour. All right, prior to the adjournment of the hearing, the following statement must be read. As required by law, the proposed 2016-17 millage rate necessary to fund the tentative budget exceeds the rollback rate by 1.43%. As required by me, the following statement. For clarity to our community, since this tends to be confusing, the proposed millage rate is a reduction in millage, 0.359 mils less than the previous year. We're required to post notice, which we have done, that the coming year is a tax increase due to the reduced millage generating more revenue than the previous year. That concludes the public hearing, and this meeting is now adjourned.